Welcome to Alternate Fronts, where we rewrite history battle by battle. Cannae, 216 BCE, the greatest defeat in Rome's long and bloody history. Nearly 70,000 Roman soldiers cut down in a single day. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general, had just delivered a crushing blow to the Roman Republic. And yet, he did not march on Rome. Why not? And more importantly, what if he had? Today, we explore one of history's most fascinating what-ifs. What would have happened if Hannibal had decided to strike directly at the heart of Rome immediately after his victory at Cannae? Prepare for a journey through strategy, historical analysis, and alternate outcomes. Because this is the battle that never was, but almost could have been.
Before we dive into the hypothetical, let's take a step back and understand the real events. The Second Punic War was one of the fiercest conflicts of the ancient world. Hannibal Barca, a brilliant Carthaginian commander, crossed the Alps with war elephants and led an audacious invasion of Italy. At Cannae, he executed one of the most famous tactical maneuvers in military history, the double envelopment. With fewer troops, he surrounded and annihilated the much larger Roman army. It was a devastating psychological and military blow. And yet, despite his victory, Hannibal chose not to advance on Rome itself. Why? Some say he lacked siege equipment. Others argue he believed Rome would surrender without a direct assault. Whatever the reason, it remains one of the great mysteries of military history. But today, we ask the question, what if he had changed his mind? Let's start by analyzing the forces involved. After Cannae, Hannibal's army was significantly weakened. Estimates suggest he lost around 6,000 men. Not catastrophic, but enough to make a siege difficult. His force consisted of a mix of Numidian cavalry, Iberian and Celtic infantry, and remnants of his elite African troops. Rome, on the other hand, had suffered a massive loss, but it wasn't defenseless. The city still had walls, a small garrison, and thousands of armed citizens. More importantly, Rome had the ability to raise new legions quickly, even after disaster. So here's our scenario. Within days of Cannae, Hannibal decides to move on Rome. His army, exhausted but still disciplined, begins the 250-mile march toward the capital. Word spreads quickly. Panic erupts in Rome. The Senate scrambles to organize defenses. Citizens are armed, walls are reinforced. Messengers are sent to recall surviving legions from other fronts. Now, let's imagine how this campaign might unfold. Would Hannibal attempt a full-scale siege? That would require siege engines, food supplies, and time, things he likely didn't have. A prolonged siege would also give Rome time to regroup and gather reinforcements. Alternatively, could he have launched a rapid assault while shock and confusion were still high, perhaps using deception or infiltration, like bribing a gatekeeper or exploiting fear? But there's another possibility: psychological warfare. If Hannibal had simply appeared before the gates of Rome, would the city have opened its doors in fear? Or would the Romans, proud and stubborn as ever, have chosen death over submission?
Let's break this down tactically. Rome in 216 BCE was protected by formidable walls, the Servian Wall, made of stone and earthworks. While not impenetrable, they posed a serious challenge to any attacker without siege weapons. Hannibal's strength lay in open field combat, not urban sieges. He excelled in maneuver warfare, ambushes, and exploiting terrain. Rome's defenses would have nullified many of his advantages. However, surprise and morale could have tipped the balance. If the Roman leadership had been shaken, if the people had panicked, then perhaps a negotiated surrender or partial entry into the city could have occurred. On the other hand, if Rome held firm, Hannibal would have found himself in a precarious position, without supplies, surrounded by hostile territory, and facing a growing Roman counterforce. He may have been forced to retreat, potentially losing everything. Now let's explore the implications of such a dramatic event. If Rome had fallen, even temporarily, in 216 BCE, the entire course of Western history might have changed. The Roman Republic may have collapsed before it ever became an empire. Carthage could have emerged as the dominant Mediterranean power. The rise of Rome's legions, its legal system, and its influence on language, law, and culture across Europe may never have happened. Greece, Egypt, and later even the Germanic tribes may have developed differently without Roman pressure or integration. Christianity itself may have evolved in a different context, or not at all. It's impossible to know exactly how the world would look, but one thing is certain: the fall of Rome at that moment could have rewritten centuries of history.
Hannibal's decision not to march on Rome has fascinated historians for centuries. Was it a mistake, or was it the only logical choice? Imagining an alternate outcome helps us understand not just the man behind the strategy, but also the resilience of Rome and how fragile empires can be in their darkest moments. So, what do you think? Could Hannibal have actually taken Rome? Or would he have found himself stuck outside a stubborn, overconfident city that refused to know it was beaten? Maybe history didn't change because Hannibal failed. Maybe it survived because Rome simply refused to believe it could lose. Let me know your take in the comments. Maybe you would have made a better general than one of history's greatest minds. Thanks for watching. And remember, history is written by the winners, but the best stories are written by those who ask, what if? See you next time.